warm welcome to Daily Dispatch, a show that gives you all the latest news and updates from the digital ecosystem. I'm Priya Sheth. Thank you very much for logging in. Time now to get you all the top news stories that we've been tracking for you this evening. Well, first up, software testing platform BrowserStack has closed a $200 million Series B funding round at a valuation of a whopping $4 billion. With this, BrowserStack becomes the 7th Indian SaaS startup to enter the Unicorn Club and the 15th unicorn in India in 2021. This investment will help support strategic acquisitions that BrowserStack plans to take up, expansion of its product offerings, as well as continued scale and growth. Moving on to the second headline of the day, Clubhouse will be expanding the Clubhouse Creator First program to India. This comes as the audio-only social media app looks to provide creators the platform, tools and resources to help take their ideas and creativity to a larger audience. Clubhouse Creator First Accelerator program was launched in the US in March and is now being introduced in India. San Francisco-based talent management startup Sense has raised Series C funding of $16 million led by Avatar Ventures. The round also saw participation from existing investors such as Accel Partners and Google Ventures. Sense is expanding their global footprint in India with the addition of new members to the executive leadership team. Well, IKEA has announced its foray into Bengaluru with the launch of its e-commerce services as well as its mobile shopping app. The city of Bengaluru now joins the other locations such as Mumbai, Hyderabad, Pune, Ahmedabad, Surat as well as Vadodara, where IKEA has an online presence. Well, moving on to the final headline of the day, Singapore-based fund manager Venturi Partners has made its first close of $100 million. Venturi Partners will focus on investments across the consumer space in FMCG, education and healthcare services and has an ultimate target of $150 million. Well, a very warm welcome to this very insightful panel. The topic for this panel discussion today is managing costs amid COVID-19 for the retail as well as the entertainment industry. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. I have with me a very power-packed panel. I have Kumar Rajagopalan from RAI, I have Rajneesh Mahajan from InOrbit Malls, and I have Kailash Gupta from Inox. Thank you so much for being a part of this panel. I want to begin by giving our audience a little bit of a context of what the scenario has been. Over the last couple of months, both the retail as well as the entertainment industry has been grappling with how to deal with COVID-19 amid the lockdowns that have been there in different parts of the country. In fact, estimates suggest that on the retail front, there has been a 30,000 that has taken place only over the last 2 months in the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, the entertainment sector is also been facing a lot of challenges owing to both the first wave as well as the second wave. And we're hoping to discover more details from all our panelists today. Thank you very much. I want to begin with you, Kumar, to understand the kind of, the last few months and how challenging they've been for the retail industry. We've seen the first wave. We've seen, a little bit of a breather between the first and the second wave, and then yet again the second wave damaging and dampening spirits of the retail industry. What's been the experience out there? Because you've been speaking to almost every retailer around here.
Yeah, thank you, Priya. I think you're right to say that it's gone through its own amount of, let's say, ups and downs. When the initial lockdown happened last year, retail industry was almost completely shut. But that happened in the mid of March, and then by April end, some things started opening up. So we landed into a situation of about 30% business in a month, and then about 20% business in a month of normal pre-pandemic time, right? And then slowly it started getting better. By Diwali, it had come into a situation of about 70% of pre-pandemic, and then Diwali was, of course, about 85%. As of March, businesses were at about 85% of pre-pandemic level, and our whole expectation was that things will get better, right? Until before the second wave hit. There was a annoying feeling in the back of many retailers. In fact, we had an event in the month of February, and many of our retailers did say that we have to get prepared for a second wave, because I guess on ground, many of the retailers started feeling the tremors happening in a slight form. So they did say that there could be a second wave. And then when it hit us really hard. So the month of April went in a manner wherein most of the retailers got impacted. Our business had come down to about 50% of pre-pandemic levels. And our numbers for the month of May just has come in, which is about 20% of the pre-pandemic level. So it's once more gone on to negative 80% in the month of May. Now this slow unlocking is happening across the country. So that's been the way in which the overall businesses have been. And I'm talking about overall retail for modern retail. I'm not talking about individual categories. Some categories have done well. Some categories did not do well. The second trend that we've seen is that while in the first wave, the so-called essentials did retain its capabilities. Many of them were at almost 95% levels of pre-pandemic all through the first wave. In the second wave, even the essentials business has got impacted because many of the, and I do talk about the modern retail sector. That's because many of them have got larger stores. There were restrictions on the way they would operate. There was a number of hours restriction across the country. Plus, even the rural sector got impacted in the second wave. So the real impact has been even graver than what it was in the first level. So that's where things have been for retail overall.
Right. I want to come to you, Rajneesh, to understand the mall's perspective. 15,000 crore rupees has been the loss of business on, for malls pan India, owing to this kind of the second wave of the pandemic. And I was reading some numbers from the SEAI, which really pointed out to the fact that losses have really mounted because of the lack of people being able to visit malls, etc. So from your perspective, Rajneesh, I want to understand on ground what the situation has been and how difficult or challenging is it for you as a mall operator in these times?
So the numbers that you're talking about is the revenue that we generate as a top line, the consumption line. It is not the profitability of the retailer or of the mall. It is the consumption that gets generated from the mall is what we lost in these 2-3 months. There has been a slight difference in lockdown in the second wave against the first wave. Now, if I look at Gujarat, there was no month in which we were completely locked down. So we did operate in month of April, where we were not allowed for weekend and the night curfew started coming in. Then there was a lockdown for 2 or 3 weeks, and then we started slowly opening up. The first mandate was to open till 1 o'clock, and then it went up to 3 o'clock, then it went up to 6 o'clock, and now in the 5th week of operation, we are looking at going up to 8 p.m. So night curfew timings have been reducing. Similarly, for Telangana, we did see that the lockdown was not for every month. So we had restrictions in April, and then May was locked down for some time, and then June started opening. Mumbai and Maharashtra was a complete lockdown for the month of last week of March, and then April, May, and we still in Mumbai are locked down. We are not operating. Thane, New Bombay started operating beginning of this month, but there are restrictions there as well. So, what happens when you are open fully and you have an ability to manage your cost because you're looking at full operation. Now, if in New Bombay, I have to run only 50% of the shop, and imagine the infrastructure, which I have to run fully. I can't say that I will run half the air conditioning because my infrastructure has to run fully. My toilets have to be opened up for the customer. Every gate has to be manned for security, and all the protocols that we require for COVID, they need to be implemented irrespective of number of stores opened up. That kind of adds to the losses because half the capacity is shut, but I'm running the full capacity in terms of cost. And that cost is the difference that we saw from last year to this year, that with the restrictive opening, it's very difficult to manage our cost, and it's far more damaging to or it's far more difficult to sustain than a complete lockdown or a complete open. So if it is fully open, then we are able to manage our cost much better.
Right, I'm going to come to specifics about costs in just a bit, but before that, I want to come to you, Kailash. The entertainment industry has been hit the most, specifically with cinemas and the kind of restrictions out there. For you at Inox, I do understand that in the months of February and March, when things were coming back to normal, multiplexes had begun their journey of recovery, and then yet again, the second wave really dampened all kind of hopes that multiplexes really had. So at Inox, how have you been facing and dealing with these kind of challenges on ground?
Thank you, Priya, to be on the board. In our case, we were the one of the darkest time which we have seen in last 1 year, and especially we were allowed to open in the mid of October, and then we started opening because the states also has allowed us to open only on the staggered manner. So by till end of December, I mean, it was like complete dark. I mean, we were getting only 3-4% of the capacity utilization, which has moved to around 7-8% in the month of Jan and Feb. Because in January, especially, South has started releasing the new content, and the people started coming to the cinema, and that created a lot of trust and the confidence among the consumer. So the January was the beginning. February we started picking up, and by the time we hit the first week of March, Hindi, the producer also realized that this is the right time rather than just waiting and waiting. So they started releasing their content in the first week of the March. And the March we've seen almost a 30-35% of the business has come back. The consumers, I would say, not in terms of the profit, but in terms of the revenue started looking back. So all things were looking up very warm. Suddenly we have seen that a lot of producers started announcing their movie and the lineup. And by the mid of March, we realized there is a huge number of movies are has announced, and virtually every weekend was like it was completely packed. That's the kind of scenario started emerging. But unfortunately, by the time we hit the end of March, we have again seen the Maharashtra started closing in Jalgaon and Nasik and Aurangabad and Nagpur. So that started somewhere in the end of March, and the moment we hit the April first week, it was okay, and then we started suddenly seeing some kind of restriction. So Gujarat has almost closed down their cinema. Delhi, Maharashtra, and all other places, we started seeing the timelines up to 5 o'clock in the evening or 6 o'clock in the evening, and then started reducing one by one. And by the time we reached to the mid of April, it was almost half of the India was closed. And by end of the April, virtually we were closed 100% across the country. So this pandemic has hit the hardest to the cinema industry. In the peak of time, the pre-COVID, the country had around 9,600 screens operating. And in the mid of March, when we were at the peak of the last year, I would say, around 6,000 screens were only working across the country. So effectively, the 3,600 screen has not resolved the issues with the developers or rental issues or maybe electricity issues or some other issues, but they were continue to remain shut. I mean, probably they were not in a position to reopen because the losses were mounting up. And the current scenario is, we are 100% shut right now across the country. We are allowed to open in the 1 or 2 part of the Maharashtra only, which is again in I would say, small streets and small places. New Bombay, we have allowed to open with some restrictions and capacity and everything, but unfortunately, there is no content. If you open a 1 or 2 cinema in a 1 or 2 part of the, Maharashtra, it doesn't make sense for us. So we decided not to open up as of now. Really, you'll see a lot of, the relaxation in the next 2-3 weeks time. And then maybe July is something where we'll look again to reopen the cinema. So virtually, I would say, industry has never seen such kind of, downfall in last 100 years, where cinema is running. And the strong player can still survive because they can raise the money from the market, or they can infuse the funds through some debt or other, medium. But smaller player, very, very difficult to survive. And our estimate talks about almost 1,000 screens are shutting down on a permanent basis.
Right. We're going to come to those details, but I want to bring both you, Kumar, and Rajneesh into this conversation to talk about rentals, one very important part that both retailers are facing and mall operators are also tackling with. But, Kumar, at this point in time, we've seen rental costs being very difficult for retailers to pay up owing to the kind of shutdowns that we've been seeing. So do you think that retailers are looking at changing their model of operating? And do you think perhaps this could be a permanent change that could be implemented going forward?
I think the one thing that did happen thanks to the pandemic is that every business has really gone through a deep scrutiny of all the costs that they are incurring, right? They have also done a deep scrutiny on the way in which they have to take care of their revenues. And I think we'll have to first talk about the revenues before we come to the costs. Because the fact is that suddenly many of the businesses started looking at channels very carefully. And instead of just taking things for granted, they looked at all the possible channels and looking at where can they get even that one additional trickle of money into their pockets. And that's possibly a good part of what's happening in this whole pandemic. So we have to highlight the fact that many of them have started doing things online. Many of them have started really relooking at the last mile delivery personnel to make sure that availability is there at various parts of the country, including some of the very small stores have started looking at the entire country, if not the world, as their market, instead of just looking at the place that they were operating in. Very small members of ours stationed in some depths of Chennai are looking at Mumbai, Delhi, and various parts of this country as their markets as large. So I think that's the beauty of what's happening. And because of the fact that they can do last mile delivery in a slightly different form than the traditional brick and mortar form. So that's the one thing. And also, like I said, geography has become slightly more broad for them to deal with rather than just the place where they were selling. And there are lots more happening. I mean, they're also looking at their own competitors to try and see if they can sell from their competition. I want to delve a bit on this revenue part because many a times we get submerged into this cost before we really look at the ways of looking at revenues. This is, I think, a very long-lasting impact that retailers are going to have. For example, some of our retailers started re-looking at where they are selling their products from and trying to see if they could sell their products from some other retailer space, which was otherwise only occupied part by the amount of business that they had. So, for example, the restaurants were willing to even sell normal groceries from inside because they realized that they were able to do slightly more business because of the fact that grocery was allowed to be sold all through the pandemic. So these kinds of things are happening all across, and I think it's a longer lasting impact. Coming to the cost part of the situation, definitely rentals is a big chunk of what retailers pay. And I talk about retailers as a broad set of retailers, including people in the service part of retail like salons, etc. Or even the theaters and stuff like that. So everybody really relook at their costs and they're trying to see how can they really look at rentals. Similarly, employment. So staff costs and rentals are the biggest cost for any retailer. So they are definitely delving deeper into it. The retail, the people who are, let's say, the tenants, and here I'd like to use tenants and the property owner as an example here. The tenants would like to get business happening on a flexible basis, on a variable basis, because they think that if business is not happening, they don't need to pay as much rent as they were otherwise paying. The landlords or the landowners, on the other hand, have got their own problems because I think they have got money from the banks and they're also paying property tax, etc. How do they manage it? So this is a constant push and pull. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all strategy here because some of them have got property hereditarily with them. They are able to accommodate the rental cost better because they believe that somebody's been with them for 9 years and 10 years. So they can maybe take a hit for a certain period of time. Some landlords cannot do it. So I think it's different. It's not one size fits all. And also, it's a matter of where the others have come in and played their job. In some cases, for example, and I'm currently working through a concept called Together We Can. And I'm kind of placing it across various medias because I'm thinking that while the landlords and the landowners would possibly work with the tenants and try and see what they can as an adjustment, there's a need for the banks to come into the play and allow the landlords to be able to give the rent free. Why would a bank be allowing a mall operator to go rent free? Because that's going to impact the bank's profitability. So unless the banks come in, it won't work. Similarly, property taxes. Unless the state government comes in and jumps in, it won't work. Similarly, the finance ministry, unless they come in and extend their schemes to the retail sector and to entertainment sector, things can't work. So this whole emergency credit that is available, the ECLGS that's available, the 3.0 was given to various sectors, but not to retail. And currently we are kind of really banging at the walls of the finance ministry at the center to try and give. So unless all that comes in, how does this really fit in properly is the question that we are all sitting with. But definitely it's going to have an impact. Definitely there would be some people who would have worked out the methodologies better, and that could be long lasting, but it's not one size fits all.
Right, interesting perspective out there, Rajesh. As a mall operator, I do understand that you also have so many costs that you are actually dealing with on a day-to-day basis. But and as Kumar was rightly mentioning, that rental is a big chunk of the kind of costs that a retailer really pays. So from your perspective, have you been in a lot of conversations over the last couple of months with retailers? Because I'm sure there may have been a lot of back and forth on negotiating rentals, etc. Is there a new model that you're working with in terms of rental costs for them?
So Priya, there are a few things I want you to understand first. I think the very first is that everybody wants to survive and everybody wants the industry to survive. Legally, the agreements provide for each retailer to pay rental irrespective of lockdown. That's the legal situation. But not only landlords provided waiver and support during the lockdown, they provided support even after the lockdown was lifted. And while we were working and recovering from the zero sale to maybe what Kumar said, we reached around 80, 85, 90% towards the month of February. So most of the malls that I am aware of have given support not only for the lockdown starting April, but have gone up to maybe October, November, December, depending upon which markets opened when. And they continue to support retailers in terms of softer rentals, lower rentals, so that they can recover and the profits or the cash flows can be managed for the retailers. I think we are still looking at it as a temporary phase. Okay, now it might be a second time temporary phase, and there could be a third time temporary phase, but we are still looking at it as a temporary phase. We all are trying to sail through this phase as such. And last recovery rate that we saw, we are seeing a recovery rate in the second phase far faster. So the markets which have little less limitations on operations, we are seeing the recovery is far superior and much faster than what we saw last year. So if last year we started with 20-25% recovery on the week one, we are seeing the recovery starting at 47-48% like to like operations. I am saying if somebody is allowed only 3 hours a day operation, then of course that has an impact. But like to like operations, we are looking at maybe double the recovery rate to start with. And I believe that ramp up will be much faster here. Now, if we look at it as a temporary phase, then what we are looking at is the agreements are signed from 3 years to 9 years, depending upon size of the retailer, category of the retailer. And hence there is an arrangement for a longer period in place. And what we are looking at is aligning these two phases that we have gone through, or maybe if there is a third one, God forbid, we should not see that. But if it happens, there will be alignment to make sure that we all are able to align our cash flows along with the revenues that we generate. If we look at it as a permanent phase, then there are multiple things that we need to look at. The biggest cost that sits on retailers' P&L is the cost of merchandise and not the rental. So if it is a permanent and if it is agreed to be a new normal, the cost of investment into the store, the cost of inventory, the way they buy inventory, the way they stock inventory, the way they deal with the manufacturer, everything is going to be variable. So I don't know how industry will figure it out, but that has to be figured out because that happens to be the largest cost. From a developer's perspective, the infrastructure is permanent. There is no flexibility there. If I have to put up 700-800 crore rupees into creating this infrastructure, I have no flexibility. I have no variable cost. Everything is fixed for me, right from the infrastructure, the services, the assets, the air conditioning, the plumbing, the manpower, the security, and the banking. Now, if everything at my end or this side of the line is non-variable, and a lot of things are on the other side of the line are variable. We have to find a match where the variable cost meets the fixed cost, and there is an alignment, which is a tough one. Touch wood, we believe the last year recovery rates and what we are experiencing right now, the recovery rates, this seems to be a temporary phase. And hence, I don't see a major shift or a new model developing. And I think we will continue to stay on that minimum guarantee and a revenue share kind of a model. It just gets aligned for the disruption that we are facing right now. And this disruption will be handled jointly, and we will come out with an alignment model for it. But on a long run, it will continue, to my mind, the way it is. And I think we have a beautiful model in place.
Right. Kailash, on the entertainment front, and from Inox's perspective, a lot of cinema houses are choosing not to expand screens at this point of time, considering that there is an uncertainty. The other threat that they're facing is the rise of OTT as a channel, and with people used to watching movies now at home, shows at home, how many people will be really coming back to a theater is a question that a lot of people are asking. From Inox's perspective, how do you deal with this? Is expansion on a standstill right now? And secondly, with the threat of OTT coming in, or what kind of strategy will Inox implement?
Yeah, let me take the first question first. Is on the expansion front. So as of now, everybody is the expansion has been put on hold, and including Inox. So what we are doing is the screens which were ready, almost 75-80%, pre-March 20. Only those screens we are trying to complete. So those itself is 47 screens for us. And we have already closed almost 25 screens, and balance 23, 24 will come in maybe next 6 months to a year's time. But the major investment has already been done. So we are trying to finish those. Number two is we are not right now taking the new positions. We are holding it as of now because it's a wait and watch, the strategy in place. Because we really don't know the uncertainty, how long it will continue. Because everybody is talking now, wave 2 is going on. People are talking of wave 3 and wave 4 and all that. So as of now, the expansion plan is suspended, I would say, but we are not putting it on a permanent hold or so the thought process is very clear. This is just deferred. We are very confident as a cinema chain that, the things will become normal, maybe in 6 months time to a 12 month maximum. Number two is the expansion again will start the moment we started generating cash, from the business, because we know that this country demands a lot of new screens. There is a lot of area which is under-penetrated right now. So the expansion is definitely a time, requirement of time. We'll continue to do those expansion. But yes, I would say as an industry, there is a lot of challenges which has suddenly kicked in last 15 months. Probably this will continue for next 6 months to 12 months more. And post that, the things will come on place. But of course, the weaker player will be out from the industry. And probably the organized player will continue to do the business expansion. So that is one. Come to the OTT. We have seen some 18-20 movies has gone to the OTT last year, and probably a few more movies have already gone in last 2 months, and probably a few more have already tied up with them. So those movies will continue to come on OTT. But we need to understand the space, the cinema space. So almost 1,800 movies comes in a year on these cinema screens. And out of that, we could only play last year 1,100 in a normal year, because there was no further space or shows were available with us. So the content is not an issue, in the country like us, where we have the almost 300 movies of Hindi produced in a year, 250 English movies, 1,100 plus regional movies every year. So the content is not a challenge for us. Even if 20, 30 or 50 titles, slips in a year to OTT platform, that's not, real worrying us at all. So OTT, if you have seen, the movies which has released in last, few months, there was not really a very great response to those movies. And in our industry, it is more about the brand equity which is created. Because if a producer produces a movie and the movie does well on a bigger screen, the chances is that he will produce 5 more movies. If an actor is, renowned by the public and the audience, and people clap in the cinema, it means the chances that he will get a 5 or 10 more movies. But when the similar movie or the same movie comes to the OTT, there is no clap, there is no brand equity which is created. television is running for almost 30 years in this country, 20, 30 years. And I mean, we have seen at least 10 channels are releasing movie 24/7. And still those actresses or the GC channel where, a lot of actors are working, and it could be in thousands, but the recognition and name of those actresses, not even, you will recall it on your mouth with, I would say, more than 3, 4 names. But at the same time, when you are talking about, the bigger screen, you can easily count 50 people's name on your fingers. So that's a big difference between the small screen and bigger screen. And we have seen recently in the Western world also, I mean, the people have started releasing. So US is right now opened up, UK is opened up by, mid of Europe, enter, I would say, by mid of May onwards. And people are finding the movies are getting a huge response. So it means the theaters are really need not to worry about the OTT at all. I mean, OTT is there definitely and will continue to survive, but that will survive more on a web series, because people feel that the high quality content which is there in the web series will attracting more people than the people who come to the cinema. I mean, India, if you see, I mean, we have a 1.3 billion population, and out of this, only the turnaround is 1.5 times. So effectively 2 billion people, 2 to 3 billion people only come to the cinema. It means every person comes only once in 6 months. So cinema is, will continue to survive. I mean, we have already seen last 100 years. I mean, black and white to the color movie, to the invention of television, to the VCR, VCD days where, every movie used to be there outside, and next day, piracy days, we have seen OTT. So, I think we have already crossed all those phases and will continue to survive. Really, I mean, we are not worried about the occupancy and the optimism on the business side.
Closing comments with the rest of the panel. Kumar, more consolidation likely in the retail space, considering that lots of businesses are going online. Is that a trend that you see in the coming days?
Yeah, I think online, or let's call it digital commerce, is going to become an important part of most of the retailers, at least the modernized retailers. And that's going to be something that none of the retailers can run away from. Having said that, the physical part of retail is not going to go away. The physical part, in fact, most of us, since we've been locked up at home, houses, are getting desperate enough to walk somewhere else. We are feeling that flutter inside our brain, telling that we want to go out and enjoy that pleasure. I think both are going to coexist. But the way in which the businesses were operating before is not going to be the way in which things will happen going further, because every single business will have to reorient itself to create the ultimate experience for every customer who's going through this whole shopping journey. And unless they really give that, irrespective of the channel, the way in which they give, the visual merchandising that they do inside, the sizing of the stores that they would want to showcase, the kind of merchandise that they'd like to keep, the speed with which they'd like to provide the service, all this is going to get completely changed. And any retailer who's going to think that they can do business the same way they did, let's say, 1.5 years before, may find themselves at the wrong end of the stick. And that's going to be the fact of the case for us. And I think everything is going to change. But in many ways, I think for customers, it's going to be fun, because the speed of getting a product, the kind of service that you will get, the kind of experience that you go through when you go into a store and shop, or for that matter, watch a movie, the way in which you go into a salon and get your various services done, I think all this is going to change, and it's going to be lovely. We have to see through this bad phase, but all the retailers and various people that I know in the industry are sitting back and re-looking at their own strategies. They will have to re-strategize. There are no constants as far as the business is concerned.
Right. Rajneesh, a final word from you in terms of are mall operators going to go shopping now, considering that there will perhaps be properties that will be available at very, very low prices, considering that the market has typically changed?
So Priya, I don't see that the good malls will be available for a steal, or they are up for sale. I do see the weaker malls, the malls which have not been able to make a mark. We have more than 600 malls, and if you look at the performing malls, we still can't count more than 50, maybe 55 across the country, which are really recognized by consumer and the go-to places are. So those 550, there are some which are on the upper band of that, what you can call B+ mall, or some of the malls which are on the lower strata, and I think they are suffering. between the two, there are a lot of malls in India which have been sold shop by shop. So the mall owner actually doesn't own the mall. It's been owned by multiple shop owners. So I don't see them having a much of challenge because they any which way don't own much of stock. There are people who tried to do a mall and they did it the right way by holding on to the property. And if the mall has not performed too well, even pre-COVID, I think they will be under pressure because their retailers will be little more aggressive, because when retailers have to rationalize their portfolio, they are not going to take out stores which are performing well or which have the ability to turn around 20, 30, 2 crore, 3 crore, or 100 crore turnover depending upon the size of the store. They will be attacking the stores which even in the pre-COVID era were just cash neutral or were losing a little bit, and there, even when things come back to normal, retailer don't see a great profitability coming in. So if they have to cut and rationalize their portfolio, it will be those properties, and hence those properties may be up for sale or they may come around for sale, but it is going to be a tough task to turn them around. It's not easy. In our business, people say, do you have a concrete plan? In our business, everything is concrete. Once you have created those alleys, once you have created those roofs and those stores, those walkways, nothing can change so easily. It is a Herculean task to shut them all down and redo the entire design. So for us, the things are far more rigid and far more concrete in shape. And the big malls, the performing malls continue to stay relevant and they continue to grow. And I think they will not be available so easily, or I don't see challenges with them. The weaker malls will go through a challenge and they will have to manage their finances either through dilution or sale or recapitalizing their losses in last 1.5 years, but they have gone through, and there could be some changes there. But I'm very excited what I'm experiencing in last 3 to 4 weeks. Our recovery rates are far better. We are seeing people flooding. They're coming in, they're shopping. Though our recovery of footfall is still lower, but our recovery of consumption is far superior. And I'm very hopeful that in next 6 to 8 weeks time, we should be anything between 85 to 90% of recovery pre-COVID numbers.
All right, we're hopeful and we wish all of you all the very best to get businesses running, and we hope that recovery kicks in at the earliest. On that note, panelists, thank you very much for joining us today on this very insightful panel discussion. I'm sure the audience has a lot of takeaways from this panel. Thank you so much for your time. Well, time now to wrap up this edition of the Daily Dispatch. I'll catch you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Goodbye, take care and stay safe.